Hello and welcome to the Week 0 Q&A edition of the CFB Super Show. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Deuce85, and we are brought to you by the world-famous FTN Network. As always, we are officially in the mix. We're in the war zone, on the battlefield, however you want to phrase it. We're here. College football has begun, and we are officially watching the Navy midshipmen, the passing extraordinaire that is Navy, going up against Notre Dame right now as we speak. Those of you playing on FanDuel, the slate has begun. You're getting it in. If you're playing the early slate on DK, we worked through that this morning on the Discord. Articles are out for the main slate. You can watch Thursday's show with Jake and I breaking down the slate fully on demand. Also going to be in the Discord already answering questions. We use this Saturday morning Q&A show. It's more like Saturday afternoon now. Obviously, with a later slate, we pushed it back a little bit, but you can expect the Saturday shows every week going forward to start at 8 a.m. PST. That's my time on the West Coast, and 11 a.m. EST for those of you on the East Coast. A little more reasonable, but we use this show as a Q&A session. If you have questions, we're going to get you the answers. We're also going to rehash any relevant stuff, talk about the core, if it stayed the same from Thursday or not. If I'm still, on my line in the sand play, any other sneaks coming up, any roster stuff happening, any depth charts that have come out now, any changes, any rumors, any message board investigations, all of that stuff is reserved for the Saturday show. It's a hangout period. I'm talking to you, you're talking to me, and we're just doing our thing here. So looking at it early on, we've got a little bit of Audric Estime action going on there. Scored a touchdown already on the ground, 5 carries, 29 yards, and a touchdown. We do have his rushing prop over, I believe, 87.5. So a good start there with 30 yards in the first quarter. Sam Hartman has completed 3 of 4, 448 yards. Looking solid out there. Audric also a 22-yard reception. Look out there if you faded Audric on FanDuel or in the early slate. It might be GG's, might be time to go to bed, take a nap, and then prepare yourself for the main slate. If you did fade Audric there, I don't know what to tell you. All right, football, we're loving it. Now, before I get into, let me turn that off. We don't need to hear Discord notifications, okay? All right, nobody needs to hear that. I want to get into a little bit of some relevant stuff here news-wise first. Let me pull up the tweet that I posted in the Discord earlier. One of the depth charts that we were still kind of waiting on, we knew Grayson James was going to start, but the FIU depth chart was something that was not necessarily a mystery, but still something that we were waiting on. We do have that for the moment, looking like, obviously, Grayson James at quarterback, Shamari Lawrence doing his thing at running back, and then your starting wide receivers looking like kind of as expected, right? Chris Mitchell, Dean Patterson, and Jalen Bracey. I was asked on Thursday which FIU receiver I would play if I were to choose one for my main build, and I think Bracey, doing some slot work and kind of the PPR guy there, was my choice for an FIU wide receiver. Now, I do not plan to use an FIU wide receiver in my main, but he is the guy that I would use. And if you're getting any, alt builds in there and you're looking to use some guys, then that's definitely an option. Now, there is some questions also going on about Eric Rivers, the transfer from Memphis to FIU, who absolutely crushed it in camp practice scrimmage. His name came up a lot. Not looking like he's going to start. He is obviously extremely cheap, min price there, but you don't need to get too cute playing him, especially if he's not going to play as much or coming, off the bench, second string, third string, whatever it is. There are far more appealing cheap guys that we can use. Now, we're going to be in a position as the season goes on where a guy like Eric Rivers, we might want to speculate and take a shot there. Hey, we need this value. We've got 2 can't-miss quarterbacks. We've got 4 can't-miss running backs. We got to get this salary in here. How are we going to do it? Eric Rivers is our option. Right now, as it stands, there's nobody really to pay for that. We have to. Obviously, Caleb Williams is going into that QB1 slot for all of us. We have to pay for him. And then running back wise, if you take a USC running back, you're still looking under 8K. And then on the wide receiver side, we're always trying, or at least I am trying to go as cheap as possible without sacrificing too much at the wide receiver spot. We still don't have any wide receivers on the slate over 8K. You have Dorian Singer, who does project to be major chalk, but not somebody who I feel I have to have. And because of that, I'm not obligated to go and take a player like Eric Rivers. Now, maybe he plays today. Maybe he scores a touchdown. Maybe he goes off. I won't feel bad about it because there is a lot of risk involved there. If you're running 10 plus lineups, maybe even 8 plus lineups, you can definitely get him into 1 or 2 of those and take your shot. That's not a problem whatsoever. I'm already doing my famous, to me, line in the sand play. I usually pick, one player each week or when it's college basketball, each slate to really kind of, hitch my wagon to and really go all in on them to a degree. And we already know that if you've been paying attention the last, 2 shows and the article and the Discord, if you're a member of FTN, you should be. If you're not, plug ftndaily.com. Use my code DUB for a discount. Nick Nash. I am hugely on Nick Nash, well over the field. I'm certain of it. USC obviously going to put up some points. Defensively, they weren't the greatest last year. They're going to be an improved unit, but at this point, San Jose State, they're going to have to put up some points. Siobhan Cordero is better than people are acting. They have a solid running game in Kyrie Robinson. They have the Utah Tech kid in Quayle Conley. They have Justin Lockhart, who was listed as starter, banged up, but looks like he's fine, good to go. They have Charles Ross, who's going to make some noise, and he's only 4'6". Lockhart's only 4'8". You've got these cheap guys. People aren't going to be looking to Nick Nash as he sits there at 4'5". So this is the line in the sand play for me with Nick Nash. He's cheap enough to where I don't have to go super, super low and take a min-price guy, although there are 2 or 3 cheaper wide receivers that I do want to bring up once again in case you didn't have a chance to finish the show on Thursday, or if you need a little bit of reassurance from me on some of your multi builds that you're doing alts and you want me to mention a name again that I mentioned on Thursday. I'm going to do that again. Just so you know, I'm not just going to be like, hey, I mentioned this guy once. If he scores a touchdown, I'm going to bang my chest. If he doesn't do anything, I'm not going to say anything. I never do that. That's not my style. So I will bring those players up again. We're looking at you, Mr. Simpson, and kind of re-solidify my position on players like that. But Nick Nash is my line in the sand, main team play, a guy that I am not so sure we will see a ton of rostership on. It would be actually, for me, a big-time surprise if we did. Obviously on FanDuel, Tyron Smith, Smoke Harris, Will Shepherd, that group there, that's pretty much where we're going to see a lot of that ownership on the FanDuel side. When it comes to DraftKings, we know Shepard is too cheap over on DraftKings. He's going to be highly owned. People are most likely going to take a USC receiver. We're seeing the chatter, the projections on Dorian Singer being fairly highly rostered as a wideout there. Maybe a little bit of Super Mario. We know Smoke Harris is going to be the receiver that most people take from La Tech. We'll see some Cyrus Allen. I am seeing now, there wasn't a lot going around about True Edwards prior to midweek, but we did talk about him on Thursday. Certainly not suggesting people are playing him now because of us necessarily, but his expected projection and rostership and ownership and all that stuff are higher now looking around at places than they were initially. So we will see a little bit higher ownership on True Edwards than we did before. You can play any of those La Tech receivers with confidence. But looking at it, there's just not a spot where I'm seeing Nick Nash popping up here. I really would think that Lockhart or Ross would come up before them. And I think that we're going to see in this, especially this first week here, there's going to be a ton of overlap. There's going to be a ton of groupthink, and a guy like Nash is just going to skate under the radar. Could it, be abysmal and him completely throw up, a 2-3 sub 5 fantasy point score? Certainly, always possible when I have these type of line in the sand plays. They wouldn't be a line in the sand play. I'm not going to sit here and be like, you know what, guys, my line in the sand play today is Caleb Williams. Yes, he's a former Heisman, but let me tell you how sneaky this guy is. No, I'm not going to tell you something stupid like that. I am going to give you a player like Nick Nash, who is absolutely capable of just maybe not breaking the slate, but absolutely decimating his salary, being a top 3 scorer at the position, and absolutely paying off in a big way. We talked about it at length on Thursday, but let's just rehash it a little bit. Has the good relationship with their QB, with Cordero. They played ping pong together. They hang out. They do all that good stuff. So there is that pre-existing friendship. And off the field, relationship, which tends to carry over to on the field continuity. And in practice, scrimmage, all that stuff, there has been some nice plays and some nice chemistry developing. And they do talk about it during all their pressers and other things and beat writers that Nash is going to be heavily involved in this offense. They're going to get him the football, whether that's out of the slot, whether that's going to be in the goal line, getting carries, whatever it is, he's going to get touches. I am very, very confident in that. And he is somebody that I'm going to be riding with here today. I did release an article on the betting side earlier today. Something that, I'm still having my hand in. We're still going to be loading up the tracker. Of course, we're going to be, over on ftnbets.com, having all the betting content that you can possibly handle. But that is one that I will still be putting up there and providing content for, not just the DFS and PrizePicks side, but the Nick Nash anytime touchdown score. That is my favorite one. I know that there tends to be some volatility, some variance, if you will. That's a dirty word sometimes when it comes to this type of prop. Plus 450 on DraftKings. That's solid value to me for a guy that honestly, I think will get double-digit touches in some capacity, whether that's with carries. Maybe there's a chance for him to throw the football and some kind of trick play later on. There's just a multitude of ways that they can use Nick Nash, and I'm very confident that he's going to get the touches today to pay off and score a touchdown. It's not often you're going to see me recommend an anytime touchdown score. I do it like a handful of times throughout the season because it is such a volatile prop bet to do in college football, but I feel very, very good about this one. It is nice that Nash, ended last season, the Potato Bowl, on a high note, 4 catches for 51 yards, a touchdown. Did carry the rock a couple of times for over 20 yards. So I'm looking for a very big game out of Nick Nash here. Would be phenomenal for him to score like 20 plus fantasy points, but really we're looking for that double-digit score and that touchdown to make us profitable on both the DFS side and the betting side. So Nick Nash, anytime touchdown score, that is the prop bet highlight of the day. I also wrote up Austin Jones over 74.5 rushing yards. Kind of warmed up more to the USC running back room than I was on Thursday, although I did say I felt like you could roster either Jones or Lloyd and probably get a touchdown out of each of them. When it comes to the USC passing game, there's going to be a multitude of receivers catching passes this year. 1 week can be Singer, 1 week might be Deuce. There's just so many different options there. I am, at least for week 0 here, acting a little bit safe, if you will, because of all the overlap, and looking to take a USC running back for my main at this point. But I am finding myself taking the over 74.5 rushing yards for Austin Jones. Over on DraftKings, it is minus 105, so there is a bit of value there. Last year with Jones as the 1B to Travis Dye's 1A, he did rack up over 700 yards, so obviously plenty of work there. With Lloyd coming in, I expect Lloyd to kind of be that 1B option, Jones to be the 1A, and maybe he's the one that pushes closer to 1,000-ish yards potentially. He is going to catch the ball as well. 4 of his last 5 games last year, he did have 15 plus carries as well, so we ended the season on a high note in that regard. After the beginning of the year, Dye getting most of the carries. Obviously, Caleb Williams is going to get some carries, but I do like Austin Jones' opportunity today. I think USC is going to come out, obviously, blitz heavy. They're going to throw the ball down the field. They're going to make the highlight plays. But in the second half, they're going to start wearing them down, and I think Jones is going to have that chance to start gashing them. 5 yards here, 8 yards there. Maybe he busts one for 15. And I think he's going to make that 74.5 look pretty minuscule by the end of the game, where he either eclipses 100 or gets pretty damn close. So those are the 2 prop bets that I am on today. All right, let's get over here and don't put me to the task, man. He's putting me to the test here. So Chase Colum, welcome, and my man Aquasa, Alex. He says Nick Nash becomes a household name tonight. Let's go. I love it. Me and these line in the sand plays. Chase, he has 2 questions for me. I'm gonna answer the easier of the 2 first, which is my favorite wide receiver under 4,600. I imagine you're talking about DraftKings, so I am going to sit here and tell you under 4,600 favorite receiver it's got to be Nick Nash, right at 4 or 5. If I'm tooting the horn, blowing the whistle, banging the drum, whatever fun phrase you want to say, I am on board with Nick Nash. Now, I do say we didn't have this game, or say Nash was like 6K or something, where I was like, he's a little bit priced out. What do? I would be going down and looking at the min price True Edwards for La Tech. I'm actually quite high on him. He would be a main team candidate for me if we had other guys to pay for. If there were other pay ups beyond just Caleb Williams, like a couple of guys in the 8K range that I felt like, hey, short slate, let's get these raw points, let's rack them up, I would be using True Edwards in my lineup. Honestly, I probably would be using him over Smoke Harris if I needed the salary savings. Now I don't need the salary savings, so I'm going with Smoke, who's a little bit more safe, right? But I think True Edwards is going to show some people today what he's capable of. Maybe he doesn't, become the highest scorer on the team or anything, but I think you'll see him make a couple of catches that show you, hey, this kid's going to be reliable for us all season. If they don't get him up over 5K, we can punish some people. So I do like True Edwards a lot, but Nick Nash, I'm staying on brand, and I guess I'm pot committed, married, and all in on this Nick Nash play. We'll see how that goes by the end of the day. Now, Chase also says Nash over Rollick Brown. So he's putting me to the test here because, if my co-host, partner in crime, co-pilot on the Thursday edition of the CFB Super Show were here, Jake Kucheck, he would obviously be telling you Brown is the guy. Now, this USC, I can't harp on it enough, this USC receiver room is loaded. You've got Dorian Singer coming over from Arizona, where I think his role is going to be a little bit more affected than people realize. You got Super Mario there. You've got Taj Washington, who's a home run threat each and every time. I mean, he's not going to get the snaps that some of these other guys are probably, but he's very, very efficient with his touches. He can easily, catch two passes and turn one of them into a long touchdown. You have Brennan Rice. You have, Mike Jackson coming in the mix. You have the kid, Zachariah Branch, who a lot of people are hyping up. You have my guy that I really like, Kieran Hudson, who's getting a ton of breakout hype from beat writers. And then you have the other kid I like that is the hybrid tight end, Deuce Robinson, who I think is going to be our version of Jatavian Sanders. You may remember Sanders last year for Texas, tight end that nobody rostered initially. We got him low rostered for 2-3 weeks. He paid off handsomely. We love Jatavian Sanders. Everybody knows who he is now. He'll be popular throughout the season, so we have to find a new version. And Deuce might be that guy. This enables us to get onto a chalky team like USC without falling in line and rostering 7-7 Dorian Singer at 40%, or perhaps Mario Williams at 20%, maybe even Rice because of the depth chart and how that looks. Maybe people buy into the branch hype. Now, Jake did show me that there were some places now talking about Rollick Brown. So maybe he's not going to be under the radar, lower owned as much as Jake thought at first. I obviously still think Brown is worth a shot. 4-3. The only problem is he's not min price. If he was like 3-5 or below, I think I would really entertain that play a little bit more. The 4-3 price tag makes me slightly uncomfortable because there are other cheaper options around there that I think don't have as much competition for touches. Now, when you look at Brown and you take a look at, his last few games of the season, you're going to see some pretty decent production there as far as being a receiver, and obviously still getting some touches as a running back as well. And there's going to be opportunity for him to get touches in a similar manner to Nick Nash, where he'll operate out of the slot. He'll probably get some jet sweeps. He'll probably get some straight up carries. Like, there's going to be touches for Brown, definitely. But again, there's so much competition. I find it harder for me to sit here and tell you, yes, Brown's going to get double-digit touches and score a touchdown. I'm not as confident when I say that as I am, hey, Nick Nash is getting double-digit touches today and scoring a touchdown. Now, Jake may disagree with that, and that's fine, but I just mentioned about 6 or 7 guys who on this USC team wouldn't shock me one bit if they were the leader at the end of the day in terms of raw fantasy points in this receiver room. And then you got to factor in the fact that Caleb Williams might run some touchdowns in. You still have 2 certifiably strong running backs in the mix with Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd, who are also going to get their touches. And suddenly we're looking at even less of a workload for Brown, less touches. He has to be super hyper efficient to get it done. That's tough for me. He's definitely in play. I have GPP exposure, but to me, he's not a main team play. If I'm wrong about that and he scores a touchdown today or goes for like 75 plus yards, I'm super happy because that means Jake hit on his under the radar play. It also means that most of that rostership was probably from the FTN, which means some of our lineups are going to do well. So I'm happy if he does well for sure. But straight up, if it's between Nash and Brown, I am going to be using Nash. And for what it's worth at this moment in time in my main lineup, I do have all of the Nick Nash there. Obviously, Will Shepherd eating that chalk there. I'm eating the chalk there with Caleb Williams because who else are we going to play at quarterback? There's a time and place to get cute. There's a time and place to find leverage. There's a time and place for 4 running backs in your lineup, but that time and place is not today. But fear not, we have 10 plus weeks to find that time. I'm eating the chalk with Tylan Hines. I'm super sad about it. I really wanted Tylan Hines to be like 25% owned, but I knew that was going to be a tough ask. I'm eating the chalk with Thornton. So there are 4 plays that are going to be super highly owned. It's a shorter slate. There's 5 games. There's a couple of the games that are a little bit rough, right? And knowing just how underpriced options like Hines and Thornton and Will Shepherd are, you have to expect to know that all those guys are going to be highly owned. So I'm not going to get cute there. I'm going to beat them somewhere else. Now, if you're running that multiple lineup, large field tournaments, then yeah, you're taking some of those guys out and you're taking shots elsewhere. Injuries happen, God forbid. These are kids, at the end of the day, maybe they didn't get a good night's sleep. Maybe, one play that messes up and the kid's in his head for the rest of the game. Like, these things happen. We can't factor them in, mathematically, but this is real world emotional stuff for 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. Hell, Braylon Allen was playing football at a high level for Wisconsin just 2 seasons ago as 17 years old. Think about what you were doing at 17 years old. And then you're out there with a bunch of schmoes like us. Give him the ball 35 times. Go, 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 right? Like, just think about that. So I think Hines and Thornton are everybody's running backs. And then I think that third running back is either, if you go with the running back in the flex, which at this point I feel pretty decent about, one of those USC backs, possibly Shamari Lawrence, who is there for FIU, although FIU, I'm kind of sour on FIU. They're going to have to throw the ball. I'm not crazy about Grayson James. So Lawrence is somebody that I'm under. Whatever the projected ownership or whatever the final ownership ends up being on Lawrence, I'm expecting to be under on him. Bangura is somebody who I'm obviously very light on. I'm worried about O'Shawn Allison returning there for what his workload will look like. That's a wait and see opportunity for me. We're going to have plenty of opportunities to use Ohio players on Maction slates. So I'm low on Bangura. I like Keenan Christian a lot, Christon for San Diego State, but he's not even getting the start there. That's going to turn into a multi-headed monster there. Jamani Jones for New Mexico State looks nice. Star Thomas for New Mexico State. So there's players. Kyrie Robinson, who I absolutely love as a borderline main team play as well. And then you have the kid Cedric Alexander for Vanderbilt, also in the mix. Even though he's not starting, we expect Vanderbilt to be giving carries to Cedric Alexander in the second half. He may end up seeing a big enough workload where he ends up being near optimal. So don't completely write him off either. At this moment in time for me, I think that flex position is a running back, and I think it comes down to a USC running back, kind of where my head is at there with the main lineup. All right, wide receivers, we really kind of touched on it there. One of the La Tech guys, you're going to see them be all pretty highly owned. Obviously, Shepherd, and then where I'm differing from the field is Dorian Singer, and that might even be where I differ, that spot right there in the flex. Like, I might be I'm taking a USC running back, and then I think people may be going with Dorian Singer there with the thought that they're getting Arizona Dorian Singer, those touches, that opportunity, that production. Could he go off today? Absolutely. It'll be painful if he does, because I am going to be lower than the field and what I'm expecting to be close to 50% ownership. But I just think there's other opportunities and other spots for us to target. So that's kind of where the projected ownership goes. USC, Dorian Singer, one or possibly two of the Louisiana Tech guys, obviously. And then you have, guys like Smoke Harris, or sorry, not Smoke Harris, Justin Lockhart, Jacoby Jones, Mario Williams, some of these other receivers that maybe have like double-digit ownership, but we're talking 10 to 15%, and people are just kind of cycling through. And then, of course, on the FAU side, you have some sneak there if they have to throw the football, and they will, with guys like Chris Mitchell, who could be pretty decent looks at 5'9". Now, I wanted to go back to some names that I would have been, had Nick Nash been like 7K and we had guys that we had to pay for and we needed the additional value. There are a couple of receivers that I was pretty interested in heading into week 0 prior to the slate dropping. One of those being for the game of UMass and New Mexico State. You have on the New Mexico State side at 4.7K, Cordell David, somebody that I think will be turning himself into the WR1 on this team. Now you have a quarterback who is certainly viable in Diego Pavia, decent enough passer, solid rushing quarterback, but a weapon like Cordell David and a name that came up in camp, practice, all that stuff coming into the season. So I like Cordell David. 4.7's a little bit spendy just because of some of these other options that we have, but he is a player that I do like in large field GPP if you're looking for some additional plays to build out your player pool. And in the same game on the UMass side, we have Anthony Simpson sitting there at 3.5, who same kind of situation as Cordell. Name came up in camp. Now, when the quarterback battle was going on between Tyson Pumachan and Carlos Davis, both of those guys were neck and neck until the very last week. And the name that kept coming up over and over on these, what a pass by Davis, what a pass by Pumachan, they 2 touchdowns in this half, all this stuff, was Anthony Simpson. Of these quote unquote, best looking plays of the practice, and his name came up an absolute ton. Is that going to translate into the game against New Mexico State? Maybe not, but looking through it, I think people, if they're going to use somebody from this UMass team, it would be like a Mark Pope because of the name, Miami, Jackson State, like people might recognize that name and use him. And he's certainly going to be a guy that I think does pretty well for them throughout this season. But Anthony Simpson just has that look and the vibes, and coming into it, the rapport, the relationship, the connection, the chemistry with Tyson Pumachan, and he would have had it with Carlos Davis. And that's part of the reason why I liked him, because regardless who ended up winning the quarterback gig, he seemed like he was well positioned to come in there and get some targets. So Anthony Simpson at 3.5, another receiver to build out your player pool. You have him, you have Cordell David, and then you have True Edwards. So you have some cheapies, and then you have the kids that we just talked about for USC that you can cycle through with Hudson, Deuce Robinson, the freak athlete, hybrid tight end. You have some cheapies that you can really work with here. Let's get into some of these other questions. If you have anything else, I'm just kind of checking to see that I'm not missing any other news. Looks like, let's pull this up real quick. Looks like Notre Dame is starting to get it on here. Estimate up to 42 yards now. So there was a 19-yard touchdown by another Notre Dame running back, it looks like, but estimate how to keep it going. My guy. All right, let's switch over to FanDuel and talk about FanDuel a little bit. I know it's already in the slate, the first game there. Hopefully you got Tyron Smith in there. We talked him up. There's still time. Will Shepherd is also a good option there. As far as the running backs go, I like Deion Hankins quite a bit. Estime was a top FanDuel play in the core, so really hoping that you got him in there. But there are some looks here, and it's important to recognize sometimes that great, viable, cheap play on DraftKings doesn't necessarily transfer over and become a cheap, viable play on FanDuel because of the way that the pricing is. I actually really like Kyrie Robinson on both sides, but FanDuel at 6.6, he's somebody that I think we need to be looking at. He has that touchdown upside. Cedric Alexander, again, the kid from Vandy at 6.5. He's somebody that looks pretty good to me. And then on the wide receiver side, you have obviously Shepherd, who I think is in play on both sides. Tyron Smith, you have Cyrus Allen sitting there at 7.4. It looks pretty good to me when you look at and you see like Mario Williams at 8.4. You have cheapies like Chris Mitchell down there at 5.9 if you want to go that route. Miles Cross down there at 6.6 if you want to go the Ohio route. Charles Ross at 7.2. So you have some of these lower price guys who really shouldn't be priced that low, but because of the fact that it is so early in the season. And then, of course, the obligatory Nick Nash plug shout out over on FanDuel at 5.6K. He's absolutely in play there as well. So FanDuel approaching it a similar manner. You just basically had to play Audric in your running back spot. Hopefully you guys did that. If you did, and you got Tyron Smith into your wide receiver spot, which you still have time for the UTEP game, then you can proceed with excitement on the other plays here. Let's open back up PrizePicks. Smoke Harris over Mario Williams. Yes. For me, that is a yes. That might be a disagreement amongst others in the industry, but again, it's going to fall back to there's a lot more mouths to feed on the USC side. I think Smoke Harris is going to get his a plethora of targets. Cyrus Allen's going to get a lot of targets. True Edwards going to get a lot of targets. I don't want to get too crazy with the hyperbole, but I think this Louisiana Tech wide receiver room has a chance to be as good for fantasy, not as good as talent-wise or maybe even overall production, but for fantasy purposes, meaning DFS and prop betting, this La Tech receiver room has the chance to be as good as last year's UTSA receiver room. You might remember how good that was and how great they did for us on a game-to-game basis. Now, that group was super underrated as well. There was a time where you could roster, in multiple lineups, just rotate through them and have them all get 100-plus yards. Zachary Franklin, the true out there, but DeCorian Clark with his 700-plus yards. You had Joshua Cephas with his near 1,000 yards. That receiver room was great. I think for DFS purposes, we're going to see a similar situation here. I think because you looked at that, at the next, those three 750-plus yards, the next closest guy, Oscar Cardenas with 438. I think there's going to be a big disparity for this La Tech receiver room with those three guys getting so much work, and then you'll have the rest, 300 or below. So Smoke Harris, I'm expecting some big targets. This FIU defense is going to be very, very soft, a beatable unit in secondary that Smoke has the opportunity to just torch time and time again. So certainly looking at him over Mario Williams. Now, Mario is a good one, assuming he's, shaking off any ailments. He's been banged up, seems like, for a while. Obviously a good one to potentially break the slate for some of those large field alt builds that you're doing. But when it comes to your single entry, your main build, or whatever you are running the most action on, my money would be in with Smoke Harris over Mario Williams. That's a definitive answer from me. Now, let's talk about some bets while we wait for some of the other. I have some questions teed up from Discord here in a minute. Notre Dame goes up again, eh? What is it now? 21-0. What a shocker. What a shocker. Anyway, still looking at some of the line movement here. The week 0 first look, which was 2 weeks ago, I had mentioned that plus 3.5 number for Ohio looked pretty tasty. I know San Diego State, it's on the road there at their house. They're historically been a tougher defense, at least recently. But it seems the public is agreeing there because that line is now plus 2.5 for Ohio, which I don't like nearly as much. I know it's only 1 point, but hopefully you got in on that early. I do like Ohio to make this one a game. I don't think it's going to be any blowout or by any means. And that 49 total, I think the over is live potentially. But just wanted to note that they are now plus 2.5. The New Mexico State line of -7, that one looked decent, but I do like still, even though that has gone the wrong way for us, Louisiana Tech -12. Believe that one was started at -10.5. Got that earlier during that week 0 first look. Still like it at -12. If you're looking for some last minute bets, I do like La Tech to win by double digits pretty handily. And that kind of brings me into, I haven't really talked about the quarterbacks quite as much yet. Hank Bachmeier redemption tour this season, being in a variation of the air raid offense. He's going to have the opportunity to throw the ball a lot. Looking at Louisiana Tech, their running back room certainly coming into the season looking very crowded, but now we have a situation with Marquise Crosby out, the Miami of Ohio transfer Tyree Shelton listed on the depth chart, but also banged up. Who knows how much work he would actually get. Now we're down to really the chalk option and Jarvis Thornton, who's going to get a ton of work. We could see La Tech throw the ball a lot, especially in the first half, and try to One, get Hank comfortable with his new team, shake off any feelings of inadequacy. You know how think about confidence issues. It's a real thing. I know we can't necessarily measure it, but it is a real thing for these kids. You saw in Boise State the way things played out. Just whenever he was on the field, he just didn't have it. He just hung his head a lot. So they're going to need to, I would imagine, set up some plays that he can deliver on early on, get that confidence, get some early touchdowns. So gotta love Hank Bachmeier there and the opportunity for him to put up a lot of points. So I do like the -12 line there for La Tech still. I think they win by like 18 or more. So I'm comfortable there. Other quarterbacks besides the two who do seem like are going to be on most of the lineups that you see in single entry, high dollar, double ups, all that stuff. Caleb Williams and Hank Bachmeier. Hank just so cheap at 5'8". Now, obviously, we're not going to get cute with Caleb. Like, you have a few lineups with that, I'm sure. There's very few scenarios to me where he doesn't end up optimal today just on raw points alone. I still like Curtis Rourke. I was higher on him on the first look. I have backed off a little bit there. I still have exposure, still probably above the field on him, but I am backed up on him. It's only mostly because coming off the serious ACL injury, I don't know if they're going to run the football more or how much shots he'll take downfield. So I'm being a little more conservative with him. Diego Pavia, who's a little bit more spendy at 7'4", has to be in consideration. Jalen Maiden, who is 100 more than Hank Bachmeier, has rushing upside. Siobhan Cordero, who a lot of people are just kind of trashing and dumping on for whatever reason heading into the week. He's still going to have an opportunity at 6'3" to generate some offense here going against that USC team. And then, of course, you have AJ Swan, who I think nobody will be looking to pay for and is the ultra contrarian play as much as can be possible on a small slate like this at 8.5. That price makes me very uncomfortable with him. But if nobody's rostering him, I at least want 1, 2, 3 shares, something like that. And I'm never using Braden Shaker for what it's worth. So, and I'm not a big Grayson James fan. I'm ready for FIU to give Grayson James a quick hook if it comes down to that and play Keon Jenkins. Keon Jenkins is the truth. And once he gets comfortable and learns how to play collegiate level football, which hopefully will be soon, he's going to be awesome. So quarterback, real easy position there after Hank Bachmeier. There's not a ton of options, but Rourke, Pavia, and Maiden are probably your best bets there if you're not going with the chalk 1-2 punch of Caleb and Hank. Coincidentally, sounds like a country band. Shout out to FanDuel. Already have next Thursday slate up. Well, how about that? FanDuel bringing the heat. They kind of gave up on their college basketball product last year and was only running like showdowns for the longest time. So if they're pulling it together, that's nice to see. Notre Dame finally had as a quarterback. Yes, Sam Hartman, there's something to be said about old Sammy. He knows how to score points, and he knows how to do it efficiently. So watch out for Notre Dame in these games here. Hartman already 8 for 10, 137 yards and a touchdown. I need those Audric touches, please. Is it the 35-yard touchdown from Greathouse, which is going to be on the all great name teams there, Jaden Greathouse. All right, a couple more questions here. As far as like news goes, we're pretty well, besides like the Rivers thing for FIU, there isn't a ton of drama or rumors that we necessarily need to delve into like we normally have throughout the week and leading into Saturday. I am getting a question here, pulling from the Discord. Is Dorian Singer a trap? Well, Mr. J. Craig, going back to what I've kind of been a broken record about, I don't know that he's necessarily a trap, but I do feel like there are some way more benefits to fading him in a lot of your action than there are following the crowd and playing him because, again, he's not on Arizona. He does have a receiver room with a ton of mouths to feed. Yes, he can probably be considered the alpha right up there with Mario Williams, but there were games last year with Addison, as good as he was, where, he slightly underperformed, or somebody else caught touchdowns, or, maybe Singer gets that one long touchdown, but does he really pay off? Does he get like 2 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown? That's nice. We like it, but we want more, right? We always want more. So I wouldn't necessarily designate him as a trap, but he's certainly not the lock and load play that I think a lot of people are acting like he is. And I may look complete like an idiot by the end of the night, and Singer goes for like 150, 10 catches, 150 yards and 3 touchdowns, something like that. If that happens, I'll gladly say, you know what? I got that one wrong. Sorry, we should have been above the field, and that's okay. But with the amount of talent that's on this USC team, I don't know that I see him doing that quite as much as maybe people think. And coming into the year with Jordan Addison, when he transferred over to USC, myself included, because I was on the Addison train during his, young years, freshman and sophomore seasons at Pitt, coming into the year, it's like, okay, wow, he's going to come in and explode and put up, 1,500 yards in this offense. But but really, 59 catches, 875 yards, 8 touchdowns. I think all of us expected a much bigger season. And you go down the line here, you see Taj Washington, 785 yards, Super Mario, 631 yards. He missed a couple games. Brendan Rice, 611 yards, almost the most quietest 611 yards you'll see. Then Kyle Ford, of course, had 365. Austin Jones as a running back, 267. Michael Jackson, 236. Travis Dye as a running back, 202 yards. Rollick Brown, 175, who, way underperforming from what I thought he would play like, had 159 yards. We saw Kieran Hudson there in 152. So look at how deep they were last year. And then you take away Addison, yes, take away Ford. You still have Taj Washington. You still have Super Mario. You still have Jackson. You still have Brown. You still have Brendan Rice. You have the running back Jones that's going to get work, and Lloyd. And then you take into account the fact that they have all these young kids, such as Hudson, such as Deuce Robinson, such as Branch, who are also going to get work. And obviously, there's just not going to be enough touches to go around, unless Caleb Williams plans on throwing 50 times a game. And there may be some times where he flirts with that. But with the amount of work that the running backs are going to have to get as well, that might be tough. So no trap, but not the super elite play that people are hyping him up to be. And to be clear, there will be weeks where he does bust out, right? Like, he's not going to be putting up pedestrian numbers or anything. I make sure I'm clear on that, because sometimes I get going and maybe I go on a tangent, and it's like, wow, he really doesn't like that guy. That's not the case. I'm just not expecting him to warrant 50% ownership on a 5-game slate. Like a high percentage of the time, I guess, is the best way I can word that. And you look back and you go back to Jordan Addison's game logs. You can pick out, against Stanford, 7 catches for 172 yards, 2 touchdowns. Monster game. If Singer has a game like that, oh, hell yeah, that's a big one. 11 catches for 178 yards and a touchdown against UCLA. 7 catches for 106 yards and a touchdown against Utah. 8 catches for 105 yards against Arizona State. And then you have a bunch of 3 for 45, 5 for 65, 3 for 37, 3 for 42, 6 for 69, scored a touchdown there, and 5 for 54, which would be a disaster on its own, but he scored 2 touchdowns there. So there is an opportunity for Singer to pop one of those 550 and 2 touchdown lines as well, which would salvage and absolutely obliterate besides fade him in their main. But I think that, like I said, more often than not, we might catch that 445. And even if he scores once, like, we're still going to be okay there, especially if you go with 2 Law Tech receivers and maybe they match combine, for the salary that you're spending on Singer and whoever your second is. So I know that was a very long-winded answer, but that's what I have to say about it. Chase says, feels bad not to have a USC wide receiver, but I like so many others. Chase, I appreciate you interacting so much with the show. Thank you so much. I went around and asked people for stuff they wanted to answer on the show, usually beforehand, for this Q&A. So it's not just me, blabbering on about whatever. So I do appreciate you being so involved. And yeah, it's not a great feeling. I would probably not tell you to go with just Caleb Williams fully naked in your main build. And when I say main, I'm not just going back to like 2015 DFS where it's like you got your cash builds, you got your GPP builds. Your main lineup may be all GPP. Whatever you are putting the most amount of your hard-earned dollars, doll hairs, whatever you want to call it, that's what I consider your main lineup, just so we're clear. I know we have quite a bit of new viewers to the show this season already, which I'm super jacked about. But when I say main, I'm not meaning GPP and cash. I'm meaning, hey, you got $1,000 on one lineup. You've got 15 to 20 on your alts. That's your main lineup. And I don't care if it's in $1,000 worth of GPPs. So I probably wouldn't tell you to run Caleb Williams naked in that regard. You can pair him with one of his running backs, which is kind of where I'm leaning. You can pair him with the chalk singer, or you can try your luck at one of those youngsters, the cheap ones, Branch, Raleigh Brown, Deuce Robinson, or Kieran Hudson. Or you could just go with Taj Washington or Super Mario, who are both known commodities, have had experience, and have shown us they are capable of breaking a slate, or at least putting up a viable score, something that's not going to completely torpedo your lineup and be certifiably viable. You can fit them. Now, I'm not crazy about Mario Williams 7-2. I'm not crazy about Taj Washington 6-8, but we have all the salary in the world. We can pretty much play who we want on this slate because we're not paying that top tier price for a second quarterback, which enables us to thus play who we like the most. I wasn't even that crazy about playing Austin Jones or Marshawn Lloyd in my main, but I have so much salary there. It didn't make sense. I had actually planned to play Kyrie Robinson, where if this was a 5-game late night slate and leverage is paid off handsomely, we know that from the last 2 seasons, I probably would leave all that salary on the table and just go for it with Robinson, because we know that people make really bad lineups on the late night slate, but people have had 2 weeks to look at this. We got to pretty much come correct a little bit more by the book than I would normally perform and play one of those USC running backs. So if you're not using a USC wide receiver in your main, I would highly recommend you play one of Austin Jones or Marshawn Lloyd, because what you're banking on here is that Caleb Williams is going to get all the touchdowns on the ground, or he's going to spread it out enough through the receivers that none of them are going to be optimal, or Caleb Williams is going to score, 4 touchdowns, which is certainly probably his floor, via running or passing, and then Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd are going to score 1 each, or hopefully the one you take scores twice or gets 100 yards, right? So that's where I'm at with it. You don't have to feel too bad regarding the USC fade there. All right, I'm just going to do a quick look through Twitter, and I think we can finish up here. I do have NFL preseason content about to drop as well for the main slate as we wrap that up. Just finishing up. Also some WNBA stuff in the Discord. I am really, really working hard to help you guys out this year. As always, you guys put in the time, invest all of your stuff, your time in watching the show, supporting the show and the content. And honestly, I want to make sure I put that time back into you guys. And I get a little bit more excited when you guys win as opposed to when I win. That's true. True story. All right. Real quick, just looking through here. I don't see anything that we need to worry about so much. So, I would say, just to reiterate here, or kind of put back into your head and finalize it, there are plenty of ways to get different here. On this slate, few ways to do it in a way that I think makes sense, such as obviously not fading Caleb Williams, not fully fading USC, not fading the Louisiana Tech receiver room. Those are all spots I think that you fall in line with, and then you get different on that third receiver. And if you follow me on Nick Nash, I think that makes you just different enough. And then, whoever you stick in your flex, if that's one of the USC running backs, or you do decide to go with a receiver from USC, or perhaps you even go with let's say a FIU receiver, or you try the Ohio thing, like that. Those 2 spots will make you different enough to where you're okay otherwise. I don't think Austin Jones is going to have like 60% ownership. We can live with 25 to 30 on a slate like this in 5 games. Or even if you decide to fall in line and play Dorian Singer, where I'm expecting 50, then if he goes off, there's still 50% of us, which I'm in, that would be dead. So I don't think you have to get too crazy. I know that a lot of times people, they're looking for spots to get different just for the sake of getting different. As somebody who considers themselves a pretty heavy leverage player, not to the level of Two Guns, shout out to the NFL based god, by the way, who knows how to get leverage, let me tell you, but he does it in a way that makes sense and puts you in a position to succeed. Not playing Caleb Williams just for the sake of not playing Caleb Williams doesn't really put you in a position to succeed. If we had other options where they were going to score a lot of points, those times are going to come. Shoot, just what was it, 2 years ago with Spencer Rattler? Everybody and their mom was coming into week 0, week 1, playing Spencer Rattler. Some of you have been with me for a while. I want to use this and we'll end the show. Why aren't you hyping Spencer Rattler? Everybody's on him. Well, I like Desmond Ridder, this kid from Cincinnati. He's pretty good. He can run the football a little bit. He could throw a little bit. Yeah, he could score. He could score. I like him better than Spencer Rattler. Rattler, I don't like what I've seen. He's got this kid behind him. Looks like he might be a future starter at least, let alone maybe a future Heisman winner. I don't know. Come to find out, Rattler totally in his head, totally in his feelings, has a horrible early season, just chalk bust galore. Desmond Ridder has a big game, and the rest is history. We unfortunately don't have a situation like that. I think Caleb Williams is a little more mentally sound at this stage than Rattler was. But please don't attack me, South Carolina fans, because I think Rattler coming into this season is going to be awesome. So I want to make sure I got that out there before I got attacked. Recapping the core: Caleb Williams, yes. Tylan Hines, yes. Will Shepherd, yes. Line in the sand play, and calling my shot, the anytime touchdown plus 450 on DK. If you can find it a better price somewhere else on the internet or otherwise, or your local book, do place a bet on that. I feel pretty confident that Nick Nash will score a touchdown today. That's our line in the sand play. Thank you very much, everybody who continues to support the show. We will be back next Thursday, 9 p.m. PST, midnight EST, also on demand if you can't stay up that late, breaking down the week 1 main slate. Then I'll be back next Saturday morning, 8 a.m. PST, 11 a.m. EST. Thank you very much, guys. Best of luck today. Get over to the Discord. We'll be talking, tilting, and agonizing over each and every touchdown for the rest of the day. See you guys.